Hello everyone, myself Mulrajsinh Gohil, and as a part of our film studies assignment under the guidance of Dr. Dilip Barad, this video analyzes Frank Darabont's 1994 masterpiece of the cinematic world, The Shawshank Redemption, and photographed by renowned cinematographer Roger Deakins. Rather than evaluating this film through a literary lens, such as a reviewing plot progression, thematic morality, and characters dialogue, this analysis focused strictly on the visual mechanics of the cinematography and the mise-en-scene. Space in cinema never neutral. Through a close visual breakdown of the key frames, we will examine how Deakins employs spatial geometry, extreme variation of the camera heights, internal framing, chiaroscuro lighting, and the shifting color palettes to construct a dynamic visual dialogue between institutional containment and the human agency. Let's begin by looking at the how camera placement establishes spatial power in the very first slide. To begin our film study analysis of the Shawshank Redemption, we examine how the cinematographer Roger Deakins uses the camera height and the spatial geometry to establish institutional dominance. In the first and second frame, the camera is positioned at the extreme high angle bird's eye perspective. From this elevated angle, the inmates in the first frame are physically diminished into teeny scattered figures enclosed within massive concrete walls. In frame second, this high tracking perspective shifts spatial power entirely away from the individual hand to the architecture of the prison itself. In the third frame, the camera drops to ground level as the prisoner bus enters. Notice the strict blocking and the vertical framing. Two armed guards stand erect on the right side of the frame, visually reinforcing authority alongside the concrete watchtower, paired with a desaturated grey-blue color grade. These three frames establish a cold, oppressive atmosphere before the main character even step into the yard. So moving to slide 2, we examine how Deakins uses the microframing and the harsh lighting to convey systematic dehumanization as the new inmates are processed. In the frame 4, the camera drops to a ground level for the extreme close-up tracking shot focused solely on the shackled feet. By severing the individuals from their upper bodies and the faces, the frame strips them of the human identity. The yellow painted floor line creates a strong linear vector visually enforces strict compliance and the systematic order. In the frame 5th, the camera pulls back into a wide interior shot dominated by the chiaroscuro lighting, a high contrast mix of the deep shadow and the stark light sources. Notice how the inmates stand in the rigid horizontal row tethered by chain with elongated shadow cast across the cold stone floor. The lone guard standing on the left controls the light source side of the frame, visually signaling that the authority dictates who remains in the light and the who is the cast into shadow. Turning to slide 3, we analyze how Deakins uses the internal framing and the low-key chiaroscuro lighting during the intake sequence. In the frame 6, we see a prime example of the frame within a frame by placing the camera outside the cell. The vertical steel bars cut directly across the rat's face, optically locking him within the frame. The guard on the left is heavily underexposed in the deep shadow, visually prioritizing institutional entrapment over the individual identity. In frame 7, the camera shifts to a close-up of Andy standing dusted in the white dellosing powder. Deakins uses the low-key single source directional lighting, casting one side of the Andy's face into a near total darkness while highlighting the stark white powder. The horizontal and vertical bars of the cell grid remain visibly directly behind him in a shallow depth of field. This visual contrast underscores the emotional shock of loss of autonomy and marks the beginning of the spatial isolation within Shawshank. On slide 4, shifting from the grand architecture to micro-scale intimacy using the extreme close-up and insert shot to highlight Andy's quiet resilience. In frame 8, The camera tightly frames Andy's face in near total darkness, lit only by a faint rim light. By restricting the field of view, the frame isolates his internal focus. The extremely shallow depth of field throws the background completely out of focus, removing the physical prison bar from view and centering our attention on his individual agency. Frame 8 acts as a crucial insert shot, focusing on the tactile detail of the small rock hammer piercing the stone wall. The heavy low-key shadows obscure the scale of the wall, making the tool look impossibly small against the concrete barrier. Through this intimate camera distance, cinematography transforms a quite hidden act into a central visual motif of persistence. On fifth slide, we examine how the cinematography constructs a confinement even in the open outdoor environments. In the frame 10, Deakins uses a wide, high-angle, deep space composition during the field labor sequence. Even though the inmates are the outside under the open sky, the frame is the visually overcrowded with the bowed bodies, dusty earth tones, and the mounted guards framing the background. The desaturated dusty color palettes usually blend the men directly into the dirt, reinforcing their reduction to the physical labor. This sprawling wide shot cuts directly to frame 11. An immense insert shot focusing on Andy's hand picking up a piece of rock. The camera drops right down to ground level, cutting all surrounding environments. This abrupt shifts in camera distance break a repetitive visual rhythm of the labor sequence, highlight a subtle movement of the personal discovery and the individual focus amidst collective subjugation. Moving to slide 6, we examine how Deakins uses the prop placement and the architectural element to embed subtle narrative detail into the frame. In the frame 12, we see a tight close-up of the Andy holding open the Bible. The camera cuts off Andy's head and eyes, directing complete visual attention onto the physical object held within his hand. Soft directional light hits the gilt lettering, creating a sharp contrast against his dark denim uniform. This shot acts as a crucial setup for the key prop that gains complete visual resonance later in the film. In frame 13, Deakins uses a vertical door frame to create a clear spatial division within a medium shot. On the left, Jack the Crow purchases in deep shadow atop a file cabinet. On the right, and Andy stands lit in profile. The doorway creates a physical barrier dividing the frame into two separate compartments, visually mirroring the fragmented institutionalized space of the library. In frame 14, macro interaction. Extreme close-up insert shot of the hand moving a black piece on a carved checkboard, emphasizing the physical connection and the visual weight of the strategic decision. And also, by side of this, mentions motifs and tactical analysis, macro composition, geometric symmetry, and the tactile prop details. On this slide, we analyze the climax of the Andy's escape, where the Deakins rely on the subjective camera placement and the extreme internal framing to generate intense spatial tension. In frame 15, the camera traps us inside the circular concrete pipe right alongside Andy's, and Deakins uses a single diegetic practical light source, his small flashlight, which casts harsh specular highlight against the wet concrete while keeping the surrounding space in total darkness. Frame 16 pushes this claustrophobia further by aligning the camera lens directly down to center of the dark tunnel shaft. The circular wall acts as a natural aperture, compressing the field of view and visually reinforcing the sheer physical barrier Andy must crawl through. Finally, frame 17 flips the spatial perspective in a brilliant point of view shot looking out from inside the wall. The jagged edges of the carved hole create a dynamic internal frame trapping Warden Norton red inside circle. By placing the camera inside the wall looking out, the cinematography visually confirms that the ND has already escaped the physical boundary of the room, leaving the authoritative figures staring helplessly into the void. On the last slide, we analyze the ultimate visual payoff where the spatial geometry and the prop motifs resolve. In the frame 18, Deakins uses a dynamic low-angle medium close-up and the ND emerges into the night air. Notice how his arms reach diagonally towards the outer edges of the frame, completely breaking the rigid vertical and the horizontal grid lines that define the prison's interiors. The torrential rain provides a rich visual texture, illuminated by the strong rim lighting against the dark forest background to create a moment of the absolute spatial release. In the frame 19 acts as a direct visual rhythm to the Bible close-up from earlier. This tight insert shot focused on the ND's handwritten notes inscribed inside the cover by filling the frame with the high contrast text, and the camera emphasizes human intellect overcoming institutional control, completing the visual thread set up by the prop earlier in the narrative. In the conclusion, the Shawshank Redemption achieves its impact not merely through the script but also through the deliberate visual grammars. By the contrasting rigid vertical grids and the high angle confinement against the macro insert and the wide angle release, Deakins translates institutional control and the ultimate liberation into a spatial reality. Ultimately, his cinematography proves that the cinema speaks its own distinct language written in the light, shadow and frame boundaries. Thank you for watching. I look forward to your thoughts. Thank you very much.